So let's start with the foundation. What exactly is the EAC? Okay. The U.S. Election Assistance Commission, or the EAC, was established by Congress under the Help America Vote Act of 2002. Now, I don't know if you were alive then, but how that came about, it would be established in 2002 because of what went wrong with our 2000 elections, and the Supreme Court ended up deciding who was president. So we got Bush instead of oh, isn't that terrible? Can't think of his name now, but he was vice president. So yeah, so that was not a good thing. So it was created in the wake of the dispute of the 2000 presidential election to ensure federal oversight of elections, because there was Florida got its ugly hands in it, to ensure funding and security standards for voting systems across the nation. So now, by law, the EAC is designed as an independent, bipartisan, 4-member panel split evenly between political parties, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And then these commissioners must be recommended by congressional leadership, nominated by the U.S. Senate. Okay, it is crucial to understand that the EAC does not actually run or administer elections. That's the constitutional responsibility of individual states. So what he did was he did something to the federal level to wipe it out so that it would only be left to the states. And then he could say, hey, there's no federal around to do anything. It has to be the states, so he can do his dirty. Okay. So the EAC holds the vital federal authority to do 3 major things, okay? First, they test, excuse me. They test, certify, and decertify. Oh boy, excuse me. They test, certify, and decertify voting machine hardware and software. And you're going to see why that's going to be an issue. And he knows this, and it's intentional. Second, they maintain and alter the National Mail Voter Registration Form. He's angry about that because he couldn't get mail-in votes stopped. And third, they distribute federal election security grants to states. And he wants to have, people, his guys with guns, his white supremacists with guns at election booths to scare people. So it is a vital institutional guardrail, and that brings us to just what happened, or rather was done by Trump. Didn't happen like, oh, it rained last night. No, he set fire to the House. So the executive actions and the July 2026 personnel purge, this is what this falls under. So this story really begins actually last year. On March 25th, 2025, President Trump issued Executive Order 14155, titled Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections. And this directive ordered the independent EAC to alter the National Mail Voter Registration Form to mandate that voters provide physical documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, his SAVE Act, okay, such as a passport or birth certificate, just to register. The order also sought to unilaterally decertify state voting machines across the country and stop the counting of mail-in ballots received after Election Day. See, he's lost on that, so he got angry. Naturally, the EAC and the multiple voting rights organizations resisted this mandate, leading to intense legal battles. Federal courts repeatedly intervened, and this culminated in a permanent injunction by a federal court in Washington, D.C. on October 31st of 2025. And then an even more expansive permanent ban by a federal judge just a few weeks ago on June 24th, 2026. And this is where he got mad, pulled up his and said, okay, I'm going to get them back, because he's into revenge. This is a petulant young boy, and he's just always taking revenge. You don't give him what he wants, he just blows all the pieces off the board. So the courts consistently ruled that the executive order violated the constitutional separation of powers. Why? Because the president simply does not have the legal authority to dictate election rules or to override state control. But following his defeat in the courts and capitalizing on a recent Supreme Court ruling that expanded executive removal powers, President Trump decided to dismantle the commission's leadership entirely. Yes, he went in and got rid of the entire commission. So mark your calendars with this date because this is just what happened. On Thursday afternoon, yesterday, July 9th, 2026, a White House official abruptly fired the panel's two sitting Democratic commissioners, Thomas Hicks and Benjamin Hovland, by email. Simultaneously, the sole remaining Republican commissioner, Christy McCormick, was allowed to resign. So basically, they put it to her, you don't resign, you're getting fired too. So because the fourth commission seat had already been left vacant by the resignation of Republican Don Palmer earlier in the year, as of July 9th, 2026, the EAC has 0 sitting commissioners and completely lacks a quorum to vote or take official actions. Now we have to look at the broader context of this, okay? The administration's sudden focus on voting hardware matches significant parallel developments involving private business interests and past strategic moves. So let's talk about the takeover of Dominion, which is now called Liberty Vote, which you'll remember was the central target of conservative election theories. It was recently purchased, okay? So listen carefully. Used to be Dominion Voting Systems. Now it's called Liberty Vote. It got bought recently by Scott Leyendecker, a former Republican election official and a vocal Trump ally. So critics are rightly pointing out a stark correlation here. While the executive branch is actively attempting to disrupt or decertify current state hardware standards, a close political ally simultaneously gained control of the nation's largest private voting machine provider, so he can go ahead and alter the machines anyway. Second, their intellectual property ties. During Trump's first term, the Chinese government granted Ivanka Trump. So now the Trumps are in charge of the machines. But I won't skip. The Chinese government granted Ivanka Trump commercial trademarks. So they've been working on this for a while that explicitly included commercial rights for voting machines. So now Ivanka Trump has the patent or right on voting machines. So now to be perfectly clear, there are no Trump-branded machines deployed in the U.S. elections today. However, watchdogs emphasize that the family has long maintained an active, documented interest in the commercialization of election infrastructure. So where do we go from here? This is the part that I want you to be incredibly, incredibly clear about. I want to be clear about it with you, and I want you to be clear. How do we proceed with having our election systems do their job, even though the president has fired the commissioners? Well, neither Congress nor the federal courts have the explicit constitutional power to simply rehire the fired commissioners. They can't just go in and give them their jobs back. They can't reverse the president's removal authority because his buddies, John Crow, the Chief Justice, um, of the Supreme Court, uh, Clarence Thomas, the self-hating black man sitting on the Supreme the man who wanted to get rid of birthright citizenship because he already got it and figures he can't be touched. And Alito, Alito. Yeah. However, the agency can still do its job. Okay. The agencies can still do its job through specific legal and operational safeguards. And there are three paths forward. The first thing they can do is the career staff bypassing rule. While the political board of commissioners has been, it's completely empty now, the EAC's permanent non-political professional staff, okay, because there are still people employed there. The professional staff can actually, including the executive director, the chief IT officers, and security testers, they remain fully employed. Okay. Election advocates are preparing to leverage administrative law to show that day-to-day operations, standard testing protocols, and the distribution of election grants are already locked into existing federal guidelines. And the career staff then continue validating that voting machines meet the standard guidelines, okay, without needing a political vote. The courts can then issue emergency orders explicitly affirming that this permanent staff holds the legal authority, okay? The legal authority to sustain all system certifications through November, effectively bypassing the empty board. Number two, immediate court injunctions against interference. The courts cannot force Trump to nominate new commissioners, but they can legally freeze the executive branch from taking advantage of the vacancies. If the administration attempts to claim that voting machines are unregulated or uncertified due to emptied EAC board, secretaries of state can immediately sue. The courts have already established a firm baseline that the president cannot alter election rules, and judges can instantly bar any federal agency like the DOJ or the DHS from interfering with state machines, maintaining the status quo of the current certifications. Congressional recommendations. Under the Help America Vote Act, the Senate and the House leadership of both parties are legally mandated to submit recommendations for EAC seats to the president. Now, we know he's not going to do anything. Congress can immediately draft and publicly submit a bipartisan state of identical, universally trusted election experts. And while Trump can choose to ignore the list, it legally corners the administration, and it strips away the excuse that there are no viable candidates and provides the Senate with an immediate confirmation path if the administration capitulates under public pressure. But, we know how that will likely go. So what do we got to watch for? Okay. These are the distraction disruption scenarios. Because the president lacks any legal right under the U.S. Constitution to cancel, delay, or void a federal election, any strategy to disrupt November relies entirely on weaponizing institutional confusion. We know he's good at that. We need to be aware of three potential scenarios. Scenario A is the national security machine freeze. The administration could declare a federal national security emergency. He's already been saying that, so don't be surprised. He could claim unverified foreign cyber vulnerabilities in electronic voting systems. Because there is no EAC commissioners available to formally issue a bipartisan refutation or emergency fix, the administration could attempt to freeze or seize local machines, triggering mass lines and counting delays on election night. Scenario B, the certification deadlock. Partisan, local, and state officials could point to the emptied EAC board as proof that the voting machines lack valid federal oversight. Yeah, he does this. Then he says, see, now they don't have oversight. Local county boards could use this excuse to refuse to certify their tallies past legal stat deadlines, intentionally tying up the midterm results in court and attempting to prevent a newly elected Congress from taking office on time. And we know that it's likely to be a Democratic led Congress. So, Scenario C, it's parallel federal voter mandates. Bypassing the crippled commission entirely, the administration could order federal employees at border, federal, or postal facilities to independently demand physical citizenship paperwork, his SAVE Act, from individuals attempting to register or submit ballots. And this would create an intentional clash with established state laws, resulting again in millions of forced provisional ballots and an unmanageable paperwork backlog designed to cloud the election results. So, any problems that happen with the election will all be directly tied back to Donald Trump. Okay? So, knowledge is our best defense. Knowledge is our best defense against institutional confusion. The system still has career professionals that are doing the work, and the courts have already drawn a hard line, and local states ultimately are the ones who run their elections. And what he wanted was to eliminate federal oversight. So when a state has a problem, he won't have anyone to turn to. Then he can turn to the people, for example, in his red southern states and say, give me 11 votes. Find me 11,000 votes. Find me some votes. I won. Just find the votes to prove it. Yeah. So stay vigilant. Just stay informed, and let's keep our eyes on the real mechanics of our democracy. And I just want to thank you for listening. I hope this wasn't, confusing. I hope that it's clear. Run it back, play it back if you need to understand again what he did yesterday. But the little deviltries, he's all about that. And we need to be all about, just doing our best to stay on our feet, stay resilient, stay one step ahead of him. So thanks for listening, and keep reading, keep subscribing, liking, subscribing, sharing with other people. And I'll pop in here from time to time with some, society, culture, news commentary, and hopefully we will all be well when we see each other the next time, which of course could be tomorrow. So that's it. And thanks. Bye.